There we go. All right. Yesterday, we're learning a sicha, a speech of the Lubavitcher Rebbe that the Lubavitcher Rebbe said in 1958. This is like 7 years after he assumed the leadership of the Chabad movement. And he is explaining to us, the Rebbe is trying to explain to us a question which is asked by a lot of commentators on the Torah. And it's a question which begs to be asked. Namely, our Torah portion starts off with this grandiose statement. This is what God said to Moses on Mount Sinai. No, so you figure this is going to be a big message. Brace yourself. When you come to the land that I gave you, you have to make a rest. Shemitah. Work for 6 years and then rest. Shemitah. End the message. Says the Rebbe, what's going on over here? It says these are the commandments that God gave on Mount Sinai, and it only gives one commandment. I mean, we know that the whole Torah comes from Sinai. Why does it only one commandment? Well, it says no, because this is a genuine commandment. A general commandment. Just as this commandment of Shemitah, of the 7th year, it is also given with its details. So it says that all of the commandments that God gave on Mount Sinai and in the course of the time the Jews were in Sinai, they were all the details also. That answers your question. So the Rebbe said that doesn't answer any question. Why pick this commandment to tell us that all the details were also given? But take another commandment and give the details. What's so important about this commandment particularly? Not only that this commandment of Shemitah is not a general commandment. It's a commandment, first of all, really only when the Jews are all in Israel. Now there's some people that say that it's only from the rabbis. Some people say it doesn't exist at all. Commandment. We hold that it is from the rabbi, but it's not from the Torah. Not only that, it's only a commandment which deals with essentially with Jewish farmers and only in the land of Israel. How is this a general commandment? So the Rebbe says, I'm just going over what we learned. The Rebbe says, what is the point of the Torah? Why did God give the Torah? God gave the Torah so that there would be godliness in the world, that we would see how miraculous and amazing and holy the physical world is. This physical world is potentially holy, like a holy temple, the whole entire world. Everything is, there's different levels of holiness, but everything is being created by God. Everything is tremendous, filled with tremendous mysteries and happiness and meaning, everything. So what does God want from the Torah? The whole purpose of the Torah is that the Torah should come down to the lowest places, but it should reveal the highest aspects of God. It says that's Shemitah, the 7th year. What happens in the Shemitah year? In the Shemitah year, the highest aspect of God is revealed. You can't work on the ground. We reveal, we declare the ground belongs to God. All of our crops belong to God. All of the food belongs to God. Our nourishment, our sustenance, it belongs to God. Well, that's pretty high. That's pretty big, right? But on the same time, the earth is God and everything is holy. It's resting. On the same time, we can go to work and we can write and we can turn on lights. Not like on Shabbat. On Shabbat, you can't do any of those mundane things. Everything is supposed to be holy. So Shabbat is wonderful. It's a holy day, but it's not really so much in the world. The whole emphasis on Shabbat is God. On the Shemitah year, there's a total emphasis on God in regarding to the land, but in regarding to our day-to-day activities, it's mundane. So we have together, that's the whole point of the Torah, to reveal pure godliness in the mundane world. So it says the Rebbe, where do we get the power to do this? As that comes from the name of this week's Torah portion, Bahar, the mountain. On Mount Sinai, says Mount Sinai was a mountain. It was there physical, but it was the lowest mountain. It was humble. You have to have both together, humility and also, what do you call it, assertiveness, egotism, have to be together. Because egotism can be a holy thing. God makes everybody unique. Everyone is separate. It says that's the same thing with Moses. says that Moses is called, he was the leader of the Jewish people, but Moses was also, it says, he was the most humble person in the world. Because of the fact that Moses was the most humble person, which he by himself was not on his own, was not elevated over everybody else. Moses knew his good qualities. He knew that he was the chosen of God. He knew that only he could go on Mount Sinai and receive the Torah. But Moses said to himself that all things these are gifts that God gave me. But that's no reason for me to be haughty. This is just that somehow or other God chose me and he gave me all these gifts. It could be that if God gave these gifts to somebody else of intellect and being a leader, they would do a better job than me. Here Moses said, look at all the Jewish people, how much trouble they're making. That's probably because of me. So therefore, Moses was the most humble person in the world. On the other hand, Moses was the king. Because Moses said, right, that even these good qualities which he had as Irgeven Akli, he knew that he was just a vessel to the Torah. And by the means of the Torah, and the Torah was given through Moses. So this attitude, we have to also adapt. On one hand, we have to be appreciative of all the powers that we've got. And when it comes to the Torah, we have to be assertive and we have to stand out and not be afraid of anyone and not be ashamed of anything. We have to be like a mountain. But when it comes to our own personal interrelationships with other people, is we have to be very humble, right? If somebody says to me, Bolton, you're an idiot, Bolton, you're stupid, Bolton, you're ugly, say, okay, listen, maybe you got a point. You know, I'm going to get angry. I'm ugly. You're the one that's, right? I could easily do those things, right? And get angry like everybody else. But I say to myself, 1 second, why should I get angry? I mean, any good qualities that I have, that's gifts from God. Any bad qualities that I've got, that's because of me. Right? If somebody says something bad, maybe I should take it to heart. If the person is telling the truth, so maybe I have to fix it up. Except being ugly, I don't know how you fix that up. That's in his eye. If he's right, so I have to fix it up. If he's not right, so it's his problem. It's not my problem. Nevertheless, humility comes from thinking about God, thinking about Hashem. And the more a person thinks about Hashem, the more humble he is, the more thankful he is and grateful he is for everything that he's got. And that's the whole idea of the Shemitah year. The Shemitah year is a year where we can constantly think about God and be humble. But on the other hand, we have to be ourselves. We have an obligation to God to use all of the talents and qualities and abilities that God gave us. We have an obligation. And if we're ashamed or if we're afraid, then we can't use them. We can't be expressive. And sometimes that means you have to go against the whole entire congregation. Sometimes it means you have to earn yourself a lot of enemies, like King David did. You see the whole book of Psalms, right? But nevertheless, it says, King David says, I am a worm and I'm not a person. And there was nobody more assertive than King David. He had more enemies, like it says, like the hairs on my head. Rabu misaros roshi sonechinam. The King David had more enemies than he had hairs on his head. So on one hand, we have to develop, and where do we get the power from it? From Mount Sinai. That's what God did. We have to be like a mountain, but we have to be like a low, humble mountain. Like them, according to this, we can also understand why it says that Moshe kibel Torah Sinai. Why it says that Moshe, he received the Torah Sinai. Why he received it from Sinai, we already learned. Because when you learn Torah, you have to have the attitude like Sinai. In matters of Torah, you have to be very assertive and very powerful and fearless. But as far as yourself, right, you have to be the lowest mountain. You have to be humble. And there's a lot of people you can see, there's big examples of this. A lot of people, outstanding examples of this. You see, like, for instance, Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, there was Rabbi Steinman. These people, they were very genius in Torah. They knew Torah, and they were very, very humble people. They were very humble people. And they were very friendly people. And they really were down to earth. They really cared about others. I mean, those were outstanding examples. Of course, there's thousands of examples like this, the pupils of these great men. Right? You can see the tremendously genius people. But on the other hand, they were like Mount Sinai. They were very assertive and very, when it came to matters of Torah, they could argue and they were very this. But on the other hand, when it came to personal matters, they took nothing personally. Varum, because in Plug, that's the idea what the Torah is supposed to be, Sinai. Varum, because in Plug, if Vos is Nogea if you think about it, what is relevant ver as hot the Torah makabel? If you think about it, who cares about Moses received the Torah from Mount Sinai? The main thing is that God gave the Torah. Why not just say that? Why does it? That's how the Pirkei Avot begins. Moshe kibel Torah Sinai. Moses received the Torah from Mount Sinai. It could have just said that God gave the Torah from Mount Sinai. That's the main thing. What do we care about Moses? The main thing is that the Torah came from God. Why does it even care about Sinai? It just says God gave us the Torah. So Sinai we explain because it's a mountain, but it's low. But why? How is Moses in that? Why Moses? Aber wie me had gered früher, like we said before, is as verstandig it's understood. The anweisung, the teaching from them, from the fact which Moshe, he received the Torah. This is a zoe vid hadgasha, just like it says that the Torah comes from Sinai. The same thing. Either yid, I mean, we can say, listen, Moses received the Torah from Sinai, but Moses is not even alive anymore. What do we care? Says the Rebbe, you're wrong 100%. Moses is yes alive. And yether it and every single Jew, which he starts to go to learn Torah, Darfur Megalazan, he has to reveal the techunos, the qualities of Moses in Beider and Yanim, in both ways. Which both ways? Number one, you have to have tokif, you have to have a assertiveness and power, bravery, courage, and bittul zusammen and humility together. Like it says about Moses, like it says Moses, he was a king. Und zusammen to this, that Moses was the king of the Jewish people. He was anav mikol adam. He was the most humble person of everybody. That's number one. And number two, anava, humility, oich vesendik te eingermeiles. He has to be humble even when he knows how great he is. It's not that he has to say, no, I'm not so smart, I'm not so great. Moses has to say, yes, I am tremendously smart. I'm a big genius. And I'm a king because I deserve to be a king. I have the power of leadership that nobody else has. But on the other hand, that I'm smarter than everybody else, that's just a miracle. God gave it to me. And it's not me. Even here, you can also put in egotism, that a person could say, you know why God gave it to me? Because I deserve it. I'm better than everybody else. Even egotism can creep in there. But Moses didn't have that. Moses said the fact of the matter is the reason God chose me is because it's a miracle. I don't know. And what about that I deserve it? I can hold on to this power. That's also a big miracle. But he has to pray to God constantly that he doesn't come to, like King David prayed. It says, Altava any regal gaiva. Don't bring me to any sort of haughtiness. It says that King David was the Moshiach. It says one of the main qualities of Moshiach is humility. But King David had to pray all the time to God, please, God, don't give me any ideas of egotism that I'm better than everybody else and because I deserve it, because I really am. This is the whole idea. In the weeks between Passover and Shavuot, after God took us out of Egypt, and before we received the Torah, in these 50 days between going out of Egypt and receiving the Torah, is learned meant Pirkei Avos. We learn Pirkei Avos. There's a lot of groups of Jews that they learn until Rosh Hashanah. Chabad also does. Also, Hachana from Matan Torah, we read Pirkei Avot as a preparation for receiving the Torah. Why? Varum, because in Maseches Avos, this whole tractate of Pirkei Avot, which by the way we learn at like about 3:40, something like that, every day. Right at 3:00 we learn the Chumash with explanation, and at about a quarter to a little bit we learn Pirkei Avot for about 5 minutes. You can see the past classes if you want on YouTube. And Pirkei Avot is talking about Midot v'derech Eretz. Pirkei Avot is one of the tractates of the Mishnah, but unlike any other tractates of the Mishnah, it doesn't talk about laws. It doesn't talk about what you should do. Action, what you should do, and what a law is in this case. It talks about how you should feel, what attitude you should have, what values, what paradigms you should have, what's most important. Un derech eretz kadmel Torah. It says that having a good personality, proper attitude toward life, this is before the Torah. This is a preparation for the Torah. So therefore, the preparation for receiving the Torah on Mount Sinai, now we're outside of Egypt, right? God took us out of Egypt. We're free. We're free from Egypt. But we're free from, God took us out of Egypt. But when we learn Pirkei Avot, it takes the Egypt from inside of us. It takes the Egypt out of us. What is Egypt? Egypt is pure egotism, pure living just for my own pleasure, my own power, my own, and going to heaven, whatever, pleasure in this world, pleasure in that's Egypt. Thinking about yourself. And going out of Egypt, now you're not thinking about yourself, but what should I think about? He says, well, you're going to go get the Torah. Torah is from God. Got to think about God. How do I do that? How do I do that? He says, in order to really think about God, you have to fix your personality up. It's not just a thing you can go and talk about. I mean, you can. You can't go and, lecture and make big the speeches about and inspire crowds that they're thinking about God, and you yourself don't do anything. It's possible, but it won't last very long, because the Torah depends on our humility, and realizing that everything comes from God, and sins come from our own egotism, or at least taking our egotism seriously. Is the hachana. Therefore, we learn Pirkei Avot, because the beginning of Pirkei Avot, of the chapters of the fathers that we learn between Passover and Shavuot, is Moshe Kibel Torah Misinai. Moses received the Torah from Sinai. This means, as the hatchalas at the beginning, and the preparation for receiving the Torah is that every Jew should should be in techunos, in a movement in the qualities of Moshe, namely humility and greatness together, and Sinai being a mountain and being low together. This is the first preparation to receiving the Torah, besimcha, in a joyous way, ubepinimius, and in an internal, personal way, intimate way. That's the idea of why God picked the commandment of Shemitah to represent all of the commandments of the Torah, because godliness, humility, and working in the world, egotism together, using your ego and your powers and your qualities and your qualifications and your talents, and you're to use them only for what God wants you to be humble, but at the same time to be assertive. That's the whole idea of the Shemitah year. According to this, we can also understand, which Rabbi Yosef said, Lo titni anava deika ana. It says that they're in the end of Sota, right? This is the Gemara Sota, or is it Sota, right? In the end of the Gemara Sota, right in the end, it says, right before the Moshiach comes, there's not going to be any humility. Humility will be gone. Says Rabbi Yosef, one second, don't say that there's not going to be any humility. Mashiach is supposed to come any moment now, and don't say that humility will be gone. Right? Why? Because there's me. I'm humble. That's what Rabbi Yosef said. At first, is there more ridiculous statement than this? He said, right? Someone said the Mashiach is only going to come when there's no more humility in the world. And he said, what are you talking about? Mashiach can come right now. It's going to come even though there is humility in the world. What's the proof? Me, I'm humble. Says the Rebbe, was in Plug is this does gufa, just the fact that he says that he's humble, this is the opposite of humility. Right? Look at me. I'm the most humble person. I'm more humble than you. What are you? You're humble. I'll show you who's humble. I'm a humble person. That's ridiculous. That doesn't make any sense. How could Rabbi Yosef say it? And it's written in the Talmud. Is the Talmud making fun of Rabbi Yosef? He says, no. Says the Rebbe, no. There's a very deep message over here. Faran was declared that some people say that Rabbi Yosef, according to his opinion, hat im nit gekumt kein kavod. That Rabbi Yosef was saying, it doesn't come to me any sort of reward. Und wenn hat gesagt, that what he said, that hat gesehen, as men gibt him up kavod, whenever he saw that anyone was giving him, honor or credit, hat gesagt, lo titnia, says, don't give me any humble. Don't give me any vote. Don't give me any credit. Don't teach humility. The ikana. So there's me. Was im kumt nit kein kavod l'dato. He said, listen, the fact is I'm the most humble person in the world. But what's the sign I'm the most humble person in the world? Because I don't want anybody to give me any honor, right up to now. You see, I've always had a low profile, etc. Therefore, the fact of the matter is I've been keeping it secret, but really the fact of the matter is that I am very humble. From this nevertheless, get him up kavod rav. They gave him a lot of honor. Is thus as a baves of them another from Anshe Ador. Reb Yosef said, everyone like this. He wasn't being facetious and he wasn't a fool. Reb Yosef, God forbid, Reb Yosef was saying, listen, everybody sees that I'm a genius. They're all standing up in front of me. They're all giving me all sorts of honors. They want to give me prizes. And I don't care about it at all. I'm not. Now you're saying that Moshiach can't come unless there's no humility. He says, one second, listen. I mean, I'm not bragging. I just want to tell you that the fact of the matter is that anybody else in the generation, if they would give him all the honor that I'm getting, they would feel egotism. And I don't feel the egotism. He was being genuine. So therefore, erase from the list that you have of things that are going to be missing before Mashiach comes, erase humility, because the fact of the matter is that I am humble, right? Between me and you. Rashi says, not so. Rashi says the meaning is like this. Ika Anai says, Sha'ani anvatan. Rav Yosef was saying, I am humble. I'm advertising, I'm humble. What does it mean? From them is verstandig. It means that thus was Rav Yosef, that what Joseph says, that he was humble. This is not a contradiction to the fact of humility. Rav Yosef wasn't saying that I'm humble. I've been keeping it quiet right now. Rav Yosef was saying, I'm humble. I want everyone to know that I'm humble, and I really am humble. Right? What type of humility is that? Thus is in Einweisen, because in clearing, this is a teaching from them, was Oiben declared, like we said before, as the Mises Inyan Anova, that the true idea of humility is not to say that you're nothing, to ignore your own talents. As a conversant means that you can know about your own good qualities. Oich the Miles was as an honor, even the quality that he's humble. And from deswegen, and nevertheless, is a rebittal, he can be totally negated to God. While by him is upcalate, because by him it's an axiom, it's certain, it's a basis of truth. As all as Einamalas, that everything he has, einschließlich the miles, including the quality of humility, seine nicht sein, it's not mine, nor is the Eibishter, but only God gave him this quality. Und wie Oiben declared, like we said before, you can have both. In other words, Rebbe Yosef was saying that the fact of the matter is I have a lot of good qualities. I'm very smart. I know that I'm very wise. I have a good IQ, and I'm also very humble. When people do things to me, when people do, I don't really care. The fact's a fact. And that's also a big gift from God. The humility is not mine. The fact of the matter is that everything that happens to me, I just say, it's everything is from God, and everything is for my benefit, and everything is, I deserve it if something bad happens. I'm just humble. I don't get angry at people. What's the sign of the lack of humility? You get angry if things don't go the way you want. You get depressed if things don't go the way you want. If you see something that you really want, you go for it. I am the boss. I am the boss. That's the opposite of humility. Humility means that you feel that God is the boss in everything. And therefore, you never have lust, and you never have depression, and you never have these things, because you feel that everything is coming from God. That's true humility. And and that's the quality that everyone should have. So it's not a joke. Rev Yosef was saying, I have embodied the quality which every Jew should embody. Namely what? That I am myself and I know my good qualities. But on the other hand, I know that all my good qualities are just gifts from God. And that I've got nothing to do with the fact that I have these qualities. I'm a mountain, but a low mountain. Moses, like Moses, I'm a king, but he's the most humble person in the world. Says the Rebbe, that's the whole point of the Torah. Men can oich zagen. We can also say, as thus is the Tom, this is the reason why Yosef Rav Yosef in the Torah, sometimes your Rav Yosef is called Sinai. There's Rav Yosef and Okar Harim. There's Rav Yosef and who's the other one? Sinai. There's another, I can't remember. But Rav Yosef is called Sinai. What do you mean Sinai? That he knows all the laws of the Torah. He knows everything. Well, they're bittul, but that's not the reason. He was called Sinai because he really had true humility. His total surrender to God was in a way of Sinai. Namely what? That even though he had all these tremendously good qualities and he was a leader and he was a this, but like a mountain, but nevertheless, he was totally surrendered to Hashem. And tomorrow we'll continue right. We'll just start a little bit here. It says, now we can understand also what it says in the Torah, in the Talmud, about Rav Yosef. The Rav Yosef, he made a statement. It's also in the Gemara in Sota. It says, Rav Yosef, he made a statement. Rav Yosef, a person should learn from God because God abandoned all the other mountains and all the other places, and he put his Shekhinah on Mount Sinai. And we'll see what's his question. We should act like God because of this, because he chose Mount Sinai. We'll understand what that means. But most important, not just to understand, but also to internalize what the Rebbe is trying to get to us here. That if a person, this is also the preparation for Moshiach. What's going to be in the days of the Moshiach? Everyone will feel God, and they'll feel also simultaneously how important they personally are. God creates everyone differently. No one is expendable. No one is replaceable. Everyone is unique and necessary. Everyone, Jew and non-Jew alike. And the whole idea of Moshiach is Moshiach will bring out this uniqueness and specialness from everybody. But nevertheless, everyone there will not be any wars or egotism, or because everybody could say, hey, I'm better than you, I'm smarter than you, I have something that everyone has something that no one else has. But nevertheless, this will bring to harmony. Why? Because people will feel egotism and they'll feel themselves and they'll feel their qualities. But together with this, they'll feel a tremendous humility and thanks and gratitude to God for giving us all these things and for creating us. So these two things will be together. That's the whole idea of Mashiach, why the world will be filled with happiness, because everybody will feel who they really are. As we'll talk about more, God willing, tomorrow. And now let's learn the Yom Yom. Oh, Yom Yom, 1 second. That's why, by the way, we're saying that the Moshiach is the Lubavitcher Rebbe. That's the Moshiach. And all the Rebbes of Chabad, they were the Moshiach because they had the exact same goal, is that everyone should feel God, but everyone also should feel themselves. When we eat bread, we dip the bread into salt 3 times, and not to put salt on the bread. Some people put salt on the bread. We dip it 3 times. On the meal of the second day of Shavuot, the Tzemach Tzedek said the following, that the Tzemach Tzedek said, I was present at the meal of my grandfather, the first Rebbe, and there he said that on the festive meal of Shavuot, my master, the first Rebbe of Chabad, the Magid Mezrich, said that you should usfartem lochem, you have to count for yourself. This word usfartem, to count, means the word sapir, means to shine, brilliance and brightness. Usfartem lochem, you should make yourself, usfartem lochem, yourself, your ego should be bright. So what does it mean? My grandfather said he leaned his head on his hands and he sang a nigun of 4 stanzas. No. Yama mama mo, yama mama mo, yano yama mama yado. It's called the Nigun of the 4 stanzas. It's very beautiful. And then afterwards, he raised it. In Chabad, we only sing it at certain times, at weddings. After that, he raised his head up and he said, and with what does a person make himself bright? And then he said, with the 7 complete weeks 7 Sabbaths. In other words, by refining your 7 emotional traits, love, fear, etc., your purpose and your goals, each trait in turn is composed of 7 sub traits, 7 times 7, then it becomes 7 Shabboses. And Shabbos, you don't have to do any work by refining yourself, by working on your person. And that's what we're learning in Chassidut, in the morning and in the Sichot of the Rebbe. A person has to refine himself and connect himself more to the good. Like the Rebbe said, reveal the Aleph in the Gola. Reveal the oneness of God in yourself, and that makes Geula. Have a good day with Moshiach now. God willing, at 3 o'clock, we'll learn Chumash with commentary. Shalom, uvracha, Yechi HaMelech.